Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining me today. This is your host, idjester, and welcome back to our Advanced Squad Leader rule set in about 15 minutes. This is part 2 of our look at the movement phase. A little bit of an issue with the last video. I had recorded it, it has sound, I uploaded it to YouTube, it didn't have sound. So I deleted it, re-uploaded it, and still doesn't have sound, so I'm hoping to record this again and get this done and uploaded for you guys for the second time. Sorry it's taken a while. I've actually gotten under the weather a little bit, having some issues, so apologize in advance, but hopefully we'll get this taken care of for episode number 2 here as our look in the movement phase. Unfortunately, I did never save the game in between episode 1 and episode 2. I did save the game after episode 2. So I'm going to have to remember to save the game after each episode. But I think I have this pretty much set up the way it was at the end of episode 1. We didn't actually do much other than move our little half squad up here. The Russian player, defensive first fire, created a fire lane, and he did end up getting a pin on this unit. Don't have that in there yet. There we go. So I think he ended up pinning him. And I believe that was pretty much everything we did in the first episode. So second episode here, the German player is now trying to decide his best movement options for getting into or getting close to these building down here in L7. Remember, we're just assuming that the object is for the German player to capture the 3 multi-hexed buildings here, and for this make-believe scenario we're doing. So obviously he needs to get some units up here. Fortunately for him, the Russian player only has a couple half squads, but as you will see, advancing on an enemy is a dangerous opportunity. So the next thing the German player will do will try to see what he can do about getting into this location here. We got a couple half squads up here, a couple half squads down here that we're going to use to hopefully make the Russian player use up his defensive first fire opportunities. And so we're going to go ahead and start that procedure. So first thing we're going to do is activate this unit in H9, and we're going to move him into I-10. When we do this, the only player that can see this is obviously the unit in K7, so he could take opportunity fire, but it would be at long range because he only has a range of 2. It's 4 hexes away. So the Russian player, we're going to assume, just decides not to defensive first fire. And so the next thing the German player is going to do is he's going to spend 2 movement factors to move into this hex. Again, I might not be doing everything the best way, but a lot of times I'm just doing it to kind of introduce different strategies or different thought processes. So this is one of those situations where I'm going to be introducing some thought processes for the Russian player actually in this situation. When you see stacks of units in one location, more than likely they're going to move units individually and move them around the board individually. But a lot of times the stacks end up going in the same direction. If the Russian player defensive first fires into this hex with one of his units there, it's not going to get him as much as if he could wait until he moves into an open location, because he's not going to get the move in the open -1 to his attack. But as a Russian player, you realize that he's got another stack, another half squad, that most likely is going to be following the same attack pattern. And if this unit can leave some residual firepower in this hex, that would be a good move, because that might alter what the German player is doing. So in all, I guess what I'm trying to get across is if you're on the defensive part, if you're playing the defender, and it's your opponent's movement phase, and he's got stacks of units. More than likely, he's going to be using these units individually and moving them, but more than likely, a lot of times, he'll end up following the exact same path. For example, what I'm saying here is, okay, this guy moved into I-10, and then he ended up moving into J9, and then obviously we're going to move either into here or into this hex, one or the other. And when that unit's done, then this unit's probably going to be doing the same thing. Probably either moving into there or moving into this hex. So you can anticipate that more than likely, especially if there's terrain that's going to give the defender a bonus, he's probably going to be following that path. So when the German player is going to be activating this unit in H9, he's certainly not going to move into this hex and this hex and this hex, because he's just walking out in the open, and that's not going to be any good for him. So he's going to try and hide from as many people as he can, and then he's going to try and move into defensive terrain. So as the Russian player here, when this unit moves into this hex, although it might not be your best opportunity for getting a decent attack because you're losing the -1 from moving the open, if you can leave some residual in that hex, that might alter some of the other units to not enter that hex and maybe come out in the open or have to bypass and go around the long way, using up more movement points. If they got a CX before they can get up here, then of course when we have a close combat, that's going to be more advantageous for the defender because that unit will be CX'd. So when the German player moves in there, the Russian player says, yes, I will defensive first fire. Now, the question is, will he defensive first fire with one unit? Will he defensive first fire with both units? We're going to assume that the Russian player just decides, since they're the same unit, he's going to defensive first fire with just the unit that's on top. He wants to keep as many units available as possible because there are quite a few German players units here. So if he just spends all of his counters attacking one time, that could cause issues later on. So the top unit will defensive first fire, so it's a range of 2, so it's 2 firepower. He does get a -1 to his attack because of the non-assault move, and there is a +1 because of the tree, so it's a straight up 2 dice roll. So remember, first number here on the dice is a colored dice, not that it matters in this case, but just as a reminder. So the Russian player rolls, he rolls a 10. 10 on the 2 column is nothing. So you see there is no result there. The Russian player didn't figure he was going to get a result because, again, it's not really he's not really going, in this case, for doing damage. And we'll just go ahead and put this on this guy here. We'll just he's not really going for doing damage. If he could have done the damage, great. If he could have got some kind of result out of that, that would have been great. I mean, 2 firepower is not very great to begin with. Fortunately, it was in his little measly 2 range. But he ended up at least leaving, remember, half of our firepower 2, half is 1. So he's going to leave 1 residual. Where is our... Wow, I don't have any residual. Okay, that was not good on my part. Apologize for that. Alright, so he's going to leave 1 residual in this hex, which might alter, remember what we talked about in a couple episodes ago, being the defensive player, making your opponent decide what to do, getting him decisions that he might not be prepared for. If I was the German player, I'm probably planning on moving these guys around the bend and coming up around and trying to get some units in here to cause some massive damage. Now all of a sudden we only have a 1 residual there, but it's still, that's a 1 residual that each one of our units is going to have to pass. If we get 1 bad dice roll, we could be in trouble. So yeah, we will see. So the Russian player, or the German player, still has his movement and decides to move into this hex right there. Now, If you remember from our rules about the movement phase, this unit is already first fired. This unit hasn't fired at all. This unit hasn't fired at all. So remember, if you first fire on a unit, you can do subsequent first fire attack, but you can only do it against a enemy that is there is no other enemy unit that is closer. So this unit here could defensive first fire again at this unit, but you're going to be getting a half firepower because it's area firepower. He is going to be doubled because it is adjacent. Or he could just attack with this unit that hasn't first fired yet. So lots of decisions for the Russian player. So now the German players made the Russian player think about what he wants to do. So in this case, normally I would say a good rule of thumb is you want to use up one guy and leave another guy completely available for an attack. But this guy being adjacent, moving adjacent, is now restricting all of these units in their defensive fire, because remember, once your first fire, your secondary first fire, there can be no enemy that's closer to attack. So for example, if let's just say, well, let's not jump ahead because then I'll get confused and forget something, or somebody will do something wrong here. So let's just concentrate on this. So the guy that is first fired is now going to subsequent first fire on this adjacent unit. It is half firepower, so 2 half is 1, doubled because of the adjacency is 2, so he's back to 2. This time he's getting a -1 because he's moved in the open. He's also getting another -1 because he's not assault moved. So it's going to be a 2 -2 attack. And we're just going to go ahead and roll the dice to see what we get here. We got a 5. 5 -2 is a 3. That's going to be pretty interesting. Let's see. A 3 on the 2 column is a 1 morale check. So 1 morale check for the German unit here. The German unit is an 8. So he needs to roll, and rolls a 5 plus 1 because of the 1 MC is a 6. 6 is less than 8, so nothing happened to him, which is obviously good for the German player. German player is very happy to be able to move up and get some units adjacent to his opponents. And you will see why here in just a second. So again, we leave 1 residual there underneath this space there. This unit is now flip this over to final fired, because he's fired once, he's fired twice, so he will be done, except for, if we remember our rules here, again we're trying to bring up some situations where we get to use some of these rules we were learning about. So that was the German player's first activation down here on the southern flank. So now he sees what had happened. Obviously his opponent's using all of his attacks to leave in residual firepower here. He's still got a couple units. Obviously he was planning on moving his other units up this way, but now he can't. So now he's got to recalculate. If I move into this X, it's going to cost me 1, 2, 3, 4 to go there. 5, 6. So it's going to have to CX to get around. And remember, if I got to CX this unit to get all the way around over there, that could cause me problems later on when we're in close combat. But he's thinking that, to himself, obviously you're not talking to your opponent and trying to let him know what you're doing. He's obviously going to move. He's going to activate this unit and move into this hex right there. At that point, the same thing, the Russian player could defensive first fire on there, but again, he's more worried about all these other units moving up, so he chooses not to. Before this unit moves, he declares a CX, so he will get the 2 extra movement points. Apologize, I forgot to mention that. So he declares that. So now the Russian player knows he's trying to move extra. He's going to try and get somewhere, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, maybe over into this building, maybe over here. He knows he's trying to get somewhere that he can't get. So at least, because of our defensive fire, because we left residual here, we've made him altered, made him change his plan. Now his unit's not as strong as it normally would be because he's going to have to CX. So he moves here for 1. He moves into here for 2 more movement points for 3. He moves into this hex for 4. Now the Russian player does, we got a clear line of sight from this unit up top. We could shoot at this unit here. And he knows that if he leaves residual here, chances are these other units aren't going to come this way. They're not going to come all the way down this way. They're probably going to come up into these hexes and maybe across. So leaving residual here over here probably isn't that important. So he could choose to do it. And in fact, boy, that's a tough decision. Would he choose to do it or not? Probably. He's going to choose. Yeah, the sooner he shoots, though, the better off he's going to be. But I think, shooting at these little half squats isn't really what he wants. He wants to leave his residual firepower in locations where these squads and leaders and everything are going to run into. He knows nobody's going to come here, so he's just going to hold off. So it costs him 1, 2, 3, he's 4. He moves into this hex for 5th movement factor. Again, the Russian player thinks, he's tempted because, oh man, I could blow this little half squad away, really damage it, cause some problems. That would be really nice. But he's more worried about these full squads. And you will see your opponent. Your opponent will use his half squads to get you to use your residual firepower in locations and shoot at these little half squads, because they would much rather lose a half squad than a full squad, obviously. So he's really tempted, but again, the Russian player, he bites his tongue and says, nope, pass. And then for 6th movement factor, the German player moves into that space there. Of course, he is now CX'd, and you will notice that in case of a close combat here, this unit is going to be a +1 to his die roll, and the opponent's going to get a -1 to their die roll. So, that's the price they pay for running all that extra distance. They're now wore out, they're a little bit tired and everything. But the German player still has a couple units available, although he's starting to be surrounded. Actually, when he moves into this hex right here, this unit, which unknown to the German player, could fire at him. I think when he moved into this hex, in fact, this unit could actually fire down the line at him. But I'm just going to assume that these German player, 1, 2, 3, he chooses, or the Russian player decides not to. Obviously, the German player is not going to know what this unit is, but this unit only has a range of 2, so he couldn't make it there anyways. He couldn't fire that far. So, he chooses not to. He passes. And this unit here, I don't think would have had line of sight because that building would block, so he doesn't see that either. Okay, so the Russian player is trying to play it smart here, keep a couple units active, and see if he can take some shots on some of these full squads, or the full squad and the leader, because sooner or later somebody's going to have to come into the opens here. But what the Russian player doesn't know is we still have a couple more tricks up our sleeve yet. So we will see those in the next episode. Hopefully this part gets recorded and uploaded properly to YouTube, and we'll continue on in the next episode of your Advanced Squad Leader in about 15 minutes. Thanks for watching. Leave your thoughts and comments below. We'll see you next time.